That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, we're going to be going through and we're going to be checking out every single matchup for this week. Now, I'm going to be recording this video on Wednesday, the 27th. So actually, we can look at that Thursday night game. We can make our predictions here. But of course, before we dive into it, make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Every time you drop that like and leave a comment, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. And actually, let me go through and give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats really quick for the people who left comments on yesterday's video. Kyle coming out says, hey, thanks for the advice on all the videos. I went from being 0-3 to 4-3 with being second in the league. Hell yes. Happy to hear that, my friend. And then Raymond coming out says, Mason, if Waddle and Tua get traded to Houston, what would your take be on Waddle? Probably would not be great, assuming that Watson is not there. But nonetheless, one other thing that we have to say is go over there, join our community, join the flock on Patreon, where you can get access to updated rest of season rankings every single week, where you get an in-depth podcast breakdown of your team. When you join over there on Patreon, you get a Fantasy Flock Network hat. You get access to our group chat. You get to get in leagues with us. You get our draft guides every year. I mean, there's so much over there on Patreon. Make sure you go join the community, and also make sure you go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. When you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy, that supports this channel more than anything you would ever imagine. Probably supports this channel even more than Patreon. And if you use promo code FLOCK over there on Underdog Fantasy and make a $10 deposit or more, they actually 100% match any deposit up to $100. There are a ton of intriguing player props. You can also get into some drafts with us on the live streams over there on Underdog. So make sure you go use promo code FLOCK. Thomas, can you please throw up the over-unders for those players on those player props this week so people get a good sense of what they're looking for? And of course, you can find all those links in the description of the video. But that's enough. Let's dive into it. Let's go over to Green Bay and Arizona for Thursday night. So I know that a lot of y'all are going to be watching this. This game's already happened, so you can just laugh at me with these horrendous calls. But nonetheless, let's go to the Green Bay Packers at first. And of course, you got no Davante Adams. You got no Allen Lazard. And I know a lot of people are going to come out and say, oh, Mason, does this mean we're starting Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Can we jam in MVS? And to be honest, no, you cannot play Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, of course, this is a player that has always demonstrated that he has a very high ceiling on a week-to-week basis, just given the role that he plays in this Green Bay Packers offense. Keep in mind, this is someone that, I mean, really in 2020 in particular, you saw a couple massive blow-up weeks. I believe we've actually had one in 2021 as well. And with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a big thing is he is just the wide receiver that he is playing the role in this Green Bay Packers offense of that field stretching option. He's running routes deeper downfield. He's going to have a significantly higher average depth of target, which, while yes, that will bring efficiency with those targets for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, at the same time, this will be a wide receiver that the floor is going to be very low. Like if we're going back to 2020 where we had a very long sample, I understand. Trust me, you don't have to go through and tell me that, oh no, well, Mason, you don't understand. Davante Adams is not going to be playing this game. Of course, Davante Adams is out here, but still, even in that scenario, if you're looking at Marquez Valdes-Scantling and what we had last season, MVS with no Davante Adams drops 1 point, 8 points, 6 points, 1 point. I mean, and then right back to it, Davante Adams being in or out for Marquez Valdes-Scantling doesn't affect anything. Just knowing that he doesn't profile to be that target hog. I mean, you're just essentially betting that he has that one log ball there. So if anything, the opposing defense is just going to be able to drop back and make sure that they don't get MVS behind the safeties. Now, Robert Tonyan, on the other hand, jam in Robert Tonyan. I think this is actually a spot that he actually does have that touchdown upside that you're going to be chasing, given the fact that that red zone role should definitely be there. Now, on the side of the Arizona Cardinals, this is a team that obviously you're starting DeAndre Hopkins. And if we had Davante Adams, if we had Allen Lazard good to go in Green Bay, I'd be more excited about starting the secondary wide receivers here in AJ Green, Christian Kirk. I mean, even throw in Zach Ertz as that tight end option, just given the fact that you would expect this game to be slightly more competitive where the Cardinals are having to look to throw the ball in the second half. I will say, no surprise at all if you get a spike week from either AJ Green, Christian Kirk. I mean, Rondale Moore is a little bit more of an outside chance, but still Rondale Moore is in the range of outcomes. But the problem is predicting exactly who that's going to come from. So really, I think with Arizona, even though we know there's going to be a ton of production in this game, really the only safe wide receiver we can make that bet on will be DeAndre Hopkins. Now, our next game will be the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. With Carolina, we're going to keep it simple. You start DJ Moore, just like we said a week ago. And just like we said a week ago, doesn't matter if Terrace Marshall is playing or he's not playing, you cannot start Robbie Anderson. From an efficiency standpoint, Robbie Anderson has an argument to be made that he is the worst receiver in the NFL currently. I mean, there's no reason for you to ever go through and play him, even though the matchup against the Atlanta Falcons looks fantastic. Really, the only player you're going to be playing as a receiver here will be DJ Moore. And in the case of the Atlanta Falcons, I'm still going to be ranking Calvin Ridley as a wide receiver 1. This has been someone that's averaging over 10 targets a game. His historical efficiency is there. I think that you're going to be seeing that Calvin Ridley is a lot more productive in the back half of 2021 than he has been in the front half. Not too worried about the matchup that we have against the Carolina Panthers. I think this can be a game that's a slightly higher scoring than most people are predicting it to be. Also, I mean, you have this Atlanta Falcons team being a little bit more willing to throw the ball whenever you have Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, and Russell Gage all good to go. We see this kind of with that shootout they got into last week. So I think we are going to be starting Calvin Ridley always. You're going to go through and you're obviously going to be starting Kyle Pitts to go along with that. Now the question is, do we want to go and play Russell Gage? And I think if you have some injuries, I think if you have a couple players on bye, Russell Gage is not going to be the worst option to go through and just play in your flex spot. I mean, with Russell Gage just this past week, he was a wide receiver that you were definitely excited about the usage that you had in Atlanta. He comes away with a touchdown. On top of this, with Russell Gage, he did get 67 receiving yards, 4 receptions off of 6 targets. So Russell Gage going to be in flex consideration just for those deeper formats that you do have a couple players on bye in a 10-team league or whatever. You're never playing Russell Gage. Now let's go over to our next matchup. Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts. As we've said all year, AJ Brown, I mean, you kind of know what to expect. He's a wide receiver 1. Don't love this matchup as much as we did with Kansas City last week. So yeah, we ranked AJ Brown higher last week than we are going to be this week, just because it's not as good of a matchup with this Indianapolis Colts defense. Definitely looking a lot better, but Deebo Samuel just put up a ridiculous amount of points against this Indianapolis Colts team a week ago. And then in the case of AJ Brown, we don't even know if Julio Jones will be 100% good to go, if Julio Jones will possibly be operating as a decoy in this offense. I'll say I'm not going to be starting Julio until we see that he is 100% at practice, and there's no question on if he's going to be playing or not. And in the case of the Indianapolis Colts, just like we said a week ago against the 49ers, you're playing Michael Pittman every single week. I mean, it looks like Paris Campbell is going to be someone that you never have to worry about again in Indianapolis. T.Y. Hilton, don't know if he's going to be playing this week right now. We are going to have to continue to monitor these reports. So like I always say, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We live stream every single night. I will be able to give updates on T.Y. Hilton as we go through the week. But yeah, as of now, if it looks like T.Y. Hilton is not going to be playing in this contest, you also go through jam in Michael Pittman. Now, I will say Mo Alley-Cox is slightly on the radar. I know a lot of people are kind of dealing with a hole at tight end when you have Darren Waller on the bye week this week. So if you are in a position where you're just kind of desperate for some production, I mean, knowing how barren the tight end wasteland is currently at the waiver wire, I think Mo Alley-Cox would not be the worst pickup in the world. Now, our next game will be the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills, where Will Fuller has already been ruled out. We don't necessarily know if Devontae Parker will be playing in this contest. If Devontae Parker is out, like we have said over the past 2 weeks, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, both must start options with the volume that they would have in Miami, even if we don't like the matchup, even if we don't like Tua Tagovailoa, even if we don't like the overall offense. Still, you will be in a position that you just have to go through, and you have to jam in Mike Gesicki and Jalen Waddle. Now, if Devontae Parker is going to be playing, I think that you actually have an argument to be made where you potentially go through and bench Jalen Waddle. This is the first week over the past 2 weeks now that we do not have Jalen Waddle in our top 24 wide receivers. Actually, the first week in the past 3 weeks, Jalen Waddle over the past 2 weeks has averaged over 10 targets a game. This is someone that's also had over 150 receiving yards and 17 receptions over the past 2 weeks. So yeah, Waddle's been fantastic, but if Parker's coming back in, the role is just going to be completely different. And the matchup for the Bills, I mean, you don't necessarily love the fact that they won't be having to throw the ball in the second half with Buffalo. I mean, going back to that Kansas City game, y'all know I was telling everybody to start Emmanuel Sanders, given the fact that against Kansas City, you were naturally assuming that you're going to have that offense with the ability to put points up against the Buffalo Bills defense that is pretty damn good. That's going to cause the Buffalo Bills to throw the ball with aggression, especially in the second half. Against Miami, it's going to be like a 2-touchdown spread. So I would be expecting the Bills to most likely be running the ball in the second half. I will say, though, you're probably more excited about Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley when you do not have Dawson Knox good to go in Buffalo. So for that reason, maybe you're a little bit more excited about those secondary wide receiver options. Clearly, you play Stephon Diggs. And then from there, I think you go Emmanuel Sanders over Beasley, given the up and down performances that we've had from Beasley all season. But Sanders is definitely in play just with the amount of snaps that he's seeing. Also with maybe he gets more usage in the red zone in particular with no Dawson Knox. Now, our next matchup will be the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not too worried about this Bengals defense, but there's no way in hell that you can go through and you can play anybody for the New York Jets. I mean, it doesn't matter what position. It doesn't matter how deep your league is. It doesn't matter what players you currently have injured. I mean, the fact that we're getting Zach Wilson's backup this week, someone that I've never even heard of. I mean, Joe Flacco's not going to be playing for the Jets this week. Hopefully we get Joe Flacco for the Jets the following week here. But yeah, you can't start Corey Davis. You can't start Jamison Crowder. You cannot start Elijah Moore. And in the case of Cincinnati, fire the hell up T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I know Jamar Chase, obviously, you don't need me to talk about him whatsoever. T. Higgins is a wide receiver, however, that we do need to discuss just slightly. I know the production this past week did not look great. I mean, I've ranked T. Higgins as a top 24 wide receiver in back-to-back weeks now, and T. Higgins just has 20 points over the past 2 weeks. Definitely not a spot that you love, but if you're looking at the volume that he has had in this offense, that's 100% what we want to be chasing. I mean, with T. Higgins here, he has had 28 targets through the past 3 weeks since coming back from his injury. Now, he hasn't came away with a touchdown yet, but we just know based on what your projected touchdown rate for T. Higgins would be, standing at 6'4", 210 pounds, that those touchdowns should be coming very shortly, assuming that he continues to get this level of volume in this offense. He had 15 targets a week ago compared to Jamar Chase's 10. Of course, you prefer Chase over Higgins in a vacuum, but I still think that T. Higgins is a very appealing wide receiver in a plus matchup. CJ Uzomah had like 25 points this past week. You're not expecting that again. I promise you that. Now, our next matchup will be the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Fire up Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson, a top 24 wide receiver this week, easily, even with the tough matchup. No Juju Smith-Schuster is going to make Deontay Johnson an option that is definitely someone that you can consider as a high-end wide receiver too, just given the target volume is going to be so damn safe. Even if we don't love the offense, even if I don't love Deontay Johnson, even if I don't like Ben Roethlisberger, still, I mean, when they're going to be heavily leaning on this passing game, knowing that they are going to be trailing the Cleveland Browns, knowing that they're going to be funneling that through Deontay Johnson, you have to get pretty excited. Chase Claypool, I would say we're fine with playing him at the flex. You just have to have realistic expectations, knowing that the floor is going to be pretty low. The ceiling will definitely be high. We've kind of seen this so far through the first 2 years in Chase Claypool's career. Coming out of the bye week, we don't necessarily have anything to look at this past week, but going back to Chase Claypool in the 2 weeks prior, this is someone that you really see this up and down nature with him. I mean, back in week 5 against the Broncos, off of 6 targets, he sees 130 receiving yards, 5 receptions, and a receiving touchdown as well. Then the following week against the Seahawks, he has 2 receptions for 17 yards. Of course, you're going to expect him to be up and down. I will say Claypool probably going to be a high-end wide receiver 3 for us in our rankings officially this week, just given the fact that he does have that upside, and with no Juju Smith-Schuster, the targets are going to be there. And with Cleveland, you can't start a single wide receiver. I mean, right now we don't even know the health of Jarvis Landry. Odell Beckham Jr. has been laughably bad so far this season. So yeah, really the only wide receivers you're interested in starting here will be in the Pittsburgh offense. Now, our next matchup, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions. Detroit, the only passing down option I want is going to be TJ Hawkinson. With Hawkinson, this is someone that this past week, I mean, the volume was there yet again. I know with TJ Hawkinson, a lot of people are disappointed with what we have had essentially over the past month and a half now after TJ Hawkinson started off so hot, but still this is the tight end 4 currently in fantasy. Over the past 2 weeks, he's had 20 targets overall. Clearly, he is that go-to option for Jared Goff in this offense. If you're going to be looking at what we got in the middle of the season, we have to remember that TJ Hawkinson, back then, he was a game-time decision. We didn't even know if he was going to be going up against the Vikings, where he only had 3 targets and a total of 4 fantasy points. I mean, those down performances, I think we can throw out the window, given the injury concerns that you had with him. Playing Hawkinson, playing no one else. And in the case of the Philadelphia Eagles, you're playing Dallas Goedert when we have no Zach Ertz in this offense. I mean, if you're going to be looking at Dallas Goedert, this is a tight end that, yes, has been disappointing so far this season. However, this past week with no Zach Ertz, he actually gets his season high in 5 targets. He has 3 receptions, 70 receiving yards. We're also going to be playing Devonta Smith. I know Smith has been someone we've been too high on over the past 2 weeks, 100%, but we're still going to just maintain our stance. This is a very talented wide receiver playing in an offense that kind of has to lean on him. He's getting about 22 to 25% of his team's targets every single week, which is an elite target share for a rookie wide receiver in particular. So I think that we are going to continue to see him progress in Philadelphia. Zach Ertz is leaving about 5 targets behind a game going over to Arizona. And this is someone that did have 9 targets a week ago. I mean, out of the past month, Devonta Smith has had 10 targets, 9 targets, 4 targets, 9 targets. I mean, he's right up there with what you would expect as a wide receiver 1 for any given offense. And against the Detroit Lions, I actually like this matchup. Now, our next matchup will be the Rams going up against the Texans, where we're going to be expecting the Los Angeles Rams to just blow the Texans out of the water. Not that excited about starting Woods in the slightest here. I mean, with Robert Woods, clearly Cooper Kupp is just soaking up everything, where Woods really only has one solid week to lean on so far this season, even though I did have him ranked as our wide receiver 1 for the Los Angeles Rams coming into the season. Clearly, we are laughably wrong on that, because Cooper Kupp is that dominant wide receiver, more 30-point performances so far this season than non-30-point performances. And in the case of the Houston Texans, you may be getting Tyrod Taylor back, which in the long term definitely makes us bullish on what we're going to get from Brandon Cooks. But not sure if y'all have heard this. The Los Angeles Rams have a defensive back. I think his name is, God, what is his name? It's like Jalen Ramsey, something along those lines. I don't know. I've done some in-depth research. My analysis is that this Jalen Ramsey character, he's probably a pretty good defensive back that we probably shouldn't be playing our wide receiver 1, whose quarterback is Tyrod Taylor, going up against that player. Would not be surprised if Houston has yet another game where they don't score a touchdown. So yeah, probably not going to be the week that we go through and jam in Brandon Cooks. Now, our next matchup will be the 49ers and the Chicago Bears. Chicago, this offense is just a disaster. Like I've already said, if I ever tell you to start Allen Robinson again, whenever Justin Fields is the starting quarterback for Chicago, you need to unsubscribe to the channel. You need to tell me, Mason, you simply have no idea what you're talking about. I'm better off just not listening to any fantasy football advice than tuning into this channel. You cannot start Allen Robinson. You cannot start Darnell Mooney, even though Darnell Mooney has been better with Justin Fields than Robinson has. Now, in the case of the 49ers, I mean, clearly you're jamming in Deebo Samuel. With Deebo Samuel, he's had an incredibly high floor so far this season with the opportunity that he has had. I mean, if you're looking at it, he has had 63 targets through 6 weeks played. That's 10.5 targets for Deebo Samuel a game. Also, we know that he is going to be getting some carries. I don't want to say out of this backfield. He's going to get some creative carries as well. So just extra touches overall. Incredibly high floor with Deebo Samuel. Definitely a low-end wide receiver 1 at the minimum. Now, our next contest, we're going to have the Patriots going up against the Chargers. And although the Patriots just dropped 50 points against the Jets, I'm going to be saying we're not starting any New England Patriot in this game. I think the target distribution is so diluted across the running backs, the tight ends, multitude of wide receivers, that it's so hard to pinpoint one wide receiver we can go out there and play weekly. And in the case of the Chargers, I mean, you're playing both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I actually think that the defensive matchup is going to be a little bit worse for Mike Williams, knowing that Bill Belichick will be a little more willing to go through and try to primarily focus in on shutting down the deep threat that's going to be a lot more efficient on a per target basis, whereas Keenan Allen's going to be that just dump off wide receiver that's not giving the Chargers much after the catch, but still for fantasy, especially in a PPR format, he can be incredibly valuable. So yeah, you're starting both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. 2 weeks ago, this offense just completely crumbled against the Baltimore Ravens. But like we said 2 weeks ago, like we're going to say now, I don't necessarily think we can take too much away from that game. Now, our next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Seattle Seahawks. Like we said a week ago, the only players we were wanting to play in that New Orleans Saints and Seattle Seahawks game, given how bad the Seattle Seahawks offense is going to be, we only wanted Kamara and DK Metcalf. Outside of that, I'm not starting Tyler Lockett. I mean, with Tyler Lockett here, he's just too damn reliant on having efficient quarterback play to be productive, as 99% of wide receivers are in the NFL. You cannot blame a receiver for needing to have at least adequate quarterback play to provide you with some production overall. I mean, in DK Metcalf's instance, maybe he can overcome that, even though I'm not expecting DK Metcalf to put up the same week that he just did off that one big play that he had against the New Orleans Saints. But the matchup against the Jags, fantastic. You're going to have to play DK Metcalf, even though he will have Geno Smith. In the case of the Jacksonville Jaguars, yeah, I don't necessarily think we can get excited about playing either DJ Chark or Laviska Shenault, knowing that this game really does not have it in the range of outcomes to turn into a full-blown shootout. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks aren't going to be able to put up 30 points against the Jags, even though the Jags have a very bad defense. So yeah, we probably are going to go through and look to bench both Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault as well. Now, our next game, the Buccaneers versus the Saints. Yeah, really, the Saints. I mean, I know Marquez Callaway looked okay this past week, but still with Marquez Callaway, this will be a wide receiver that I'm not that excited about him. I mean, this Bucs defense has shut down team after team over the past 2 weeks, making Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields looking like they should be playing in Canada. But nonetheless, I think that with Tampa Bay, clearly you're jamming in Mike Evans, you're jamming in Chris Godwin. Looks like Antonio Brown probably not going to be playing in this game. Of course, we're going to have to continue to monitor this all the way till Sunday. But I mean, if we do not have Antonio Brown here, you could not be more excited about the combination of Godwin and Mike Evans. And also, you can go through play Rob Gronkowski in this contest, because clearly it doesn't matter if Tampa is going to be leading this game in the second half. They're going to continue to throw the ball. At one point, it was 35-3 against the Chicago Bears, and they went for it on fourth down on the goal line. I mean, this team's going to continue to put up points at will. I think they kind of want to break some records here with Tom Brady. So yeah, I think we're going to go through and we're going to jam in every passing game option outside of Tyler Johnson. Last week we said not to play Tyler Johnson. We're going to be maintaining that same call now. Now going over to Denver and Washington. With Washington, just like we said a week ago, you are going to be playing Terry McLaurin. Obviously, everybody's expecting Terry McLaurin to continue that production as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. Currently dealing with an ankle injury. You will have to continue to monitor that going into Sunday. And then in the Denver offense, you will have Jerry Jeudy coming back this week, which will definitely make me lower my expectations for Courtland Sutton, who we did lower down to be a low-end wide receiver 2 this week rather than that high-end wide receiver 2 as we have had him previously. But we're not going to be starting Jerry Jeudy. I would prefer to kind of see Jerry Jeudy work his way back into this offense, just given the fact you're not that excited about the overall offensive environment. While we like Jerry Jeudy, the talent, I just think that if this is not going to be an elite situation, an elite matchup, there's no reason to be risking starting him coming back from the high ankle sprain. So Jerry Jeudy will be a wide receiver that I think we can play the following week, but this week on Halloween, I think it's going to be a little too early. Now, our next game will be the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings. With Dallas, I really want to see if we're going to get Michael Gallup back in this contest. If we're getting Michael Gallup back, you're going to be slightly lowering your expectations for CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Nonetheless, you're probably going to go through and play each wide receiver. I would be a lot more excited about CeeDee Lamb rather than Amari. And with Minnesota, you're playing Jefferson, even though he's going up against Trayvon Diggs. Very tough matchup for Justin Jefferson. We have him ranked as the low-end wide receiver 1 this week rather than a high-end wide receiver 1. Adam Thielen, I actually think it's going to be a great matchup, because you'd imagine that the Dallas Cowboys, they put points up on the board early, which makes the Minnesota Vikings go through and throw the ball in the second half. And if Trayvon Diggs is on Stephon Diggs, which would make a lot of sense here, I think that you're going to see Adam Thielen probably running freely in this offense. So we would go with Adam Thielen pretty much everywhere we can. Now, our last game, Kansas City and New York. So with the New York Giants, it sucks to say this, but we just don't know nearly enough with the health of Kenny Golladay, with the health of Saquon Barkley, with the health of Kadarius Toney, with the health of Sterling Shepard. I mean, there are so many question marks with this New York Giants offense that, of course, if you only have one of those players good to go in the receiving game, you're jamming them in, knowing it's a great matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. If all of them are playing, we're probably just going to be avoiding it, not necessarily knowing exactly what the target distribution is going to look like, and not necessarily knowing exactly how healthy each player is going to be. So it's probably going to be playing like, just say, Minesweeper or something. And in the case of Kansas City, I think at this point, with how this offense just simply does not look like how it did in 2018, 2019, or 2020, you're probably not going to be able to go through and play any of the secondary wide receivers here. You can't even ask me a question about McCole Hardman, where that would just be embarrassing. You're just going to have to go through, play Tyreek, Travis Kelce, as you would expect. Now, thank you. I really hope that this video helped you out. I really hope that you got something from this video. Of course, we're going to continue to live stream every single night to answer every single question possible. So make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave that comment, subscribe to the channel. Go check out Patreon, where we have Fantasy Flock Network hats, where we have our rest of season rankings, where we get in-depth podcast breakdowns of your fantasy team, where we have our group chat, where we have our fantasy leagues. We have so much stuff going over there on the Patreon community. And also go check out Underdog Fantasy, where you can check out so many intriguing player props that you probably saw pop up on the screen during this video. Go use promo code FLOCK. If you make a $10 deposit or more, you get 100% of a deposit match. Just make sure you go through the link in the description. Make sure you go through the link down there in the comment section, wherever you grab it, and use promo code FLOCK. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for supporting this channel, and I hope you have a great day.